This is a mission-focused life with Tim Olafson, co-founder and executive director of Another Child Foundation. Up next, Tim will speak with this week's special guest, offering special insights on how you can live a mission-focused life.
Hey everyone, this is Tim with Mission Focused Life, and welcome to this week's episode of A Mission Focused Life. This week, we're going to be going into part 2 of an interview we did with Les and Rita Peters. Les and Rita are field directors of a ministry in Guatemala. It's called Impact Ministries. I visited that ministry a year or so ago, and they're doing some amazing work down there. And then the first episode, which you can check out by going to missionfocusedlife.com, go to that, and then you will be able to see part 1 of this episode along with all of our other previous episodes. But they talked about how they started their journey. They're from Canada and how they made that decision. They took the faith to step out of the boat and walk on water and head down to Guatemala. So they packed up their family, drove down to Guatemala, and what an amazing story they had. And then we finished that first part of the episode, and we talked about what true Christianity is and how in Guatemala, it's really important that they tell people exactly what true Christianity is and what that, and not a watered down version of that. So anyway, we're going to get ready for part 2. But before we do that, I would like to do something else a little bit different here to start our episode. So really what we feel called to do here at Mission Focused Life is really concentrate on helping people, inspire people to take that next or first step in them living a mission-focused life. And one of the things that brought me to this decision was just my journey. I knew I needed to live a more mission-focused life. So it wasn't just about the Sunday morning experience. It was more about living a life that's focused on serving others. And recently I was listening to a song. Mercy Me has a new song out called Say I Won't. And there were some lyrics in there that really hit me that I thought really fit well with what we're talking about here at Mission Focused Life. So I'm not going to sing it for you, and you're going to be blessed by that. But I'm just going to read some of the lyrics, and then I'm going to kind of go back and reflect on those lyrics and talk about how that is part of what we're trying to do here at Mission Focused Life. It says, so it starts off, the song says, "Today it all begins. I'm seeing my life for the very first time through a different lens." And I think that's a lens we all need to look through. We need to see the world as Jesus sees the world. And so it goes on, it says, "Yesterday, I didn't understand. I was driving 35 with a rocket inside. Didn't know what I had. Well, I've been waiting to live. My life's been waiting on me. I'm going to run. No, I'm going to fly. I'm going to know what it means to live and not just be alive. The world's going to hear because I'm going to shout. And I will be dancing when the circumstances drown the music out." So I think what this is basically telling us is I think all of us have this potential of doing so much more. We're hesitant. We're fearful. We're not living a life that God has called us to live fully. Some of us are doing certain portions of it, and some of us are doing amazing things. Not me, but other people are doing some amazing things. But what this song is really trying to get us to do is we don't need to be driving 35 when we're on the Autobahn. God has us, and he wants us to do some amazing things. So here we got this rocket inside, but we're so fearful to use it. And we got this voice inside of us that God is calling us to use to speak to other people, to serve other people, to speak life into other people. And we find ourselves not doing that. So as we go through these interviews, and I'm interviewing Les and Rusty Boroff and Heather Kiros and Andy Thomaston and Mike Duras and all these other people we had on previous episodes that, once again, I'm going to remind you to go back and take a look at those. Amazing stories of regular, everyday people getting fear out of the way and actually doing what God is calling them to do. So it's been an amazing ride so far. And part 2 of this episode with Les and Rita is really an amazing part of the interview. So I hope you stay tuned, and we're going to get to that right now. So here's part 2 of our episode with Les and Rita Peters. Enjoy.
And something that has amazed us, something that we never had heard of before, but as these children come to the school and we lead them in a devotional every day, and they learn to know Jesus and to talk to him and to sing and to worship and read his word, they go home and they begin to share that with their families. In fact, sometimes they have devotionals at home that their children lead, because they themselves, mostly the parents, are illiterate. They don't know any of these things that these children come home to tell them. And we've seen families come to the Lord. In our church actually began because parents came to us and said, we want to learn more about this, so that's how the church started. And we've seen people become baptized and saying, my children were my example. Like, it is just phenomenal, to see that happening, especially now with COVID, and a lot of them are isolated at home, but they have their little devotionals, and the children know how to lead a devotional in their family.
It's exciting. But I think you're quite right, Tim. I think, the enemy raises his resistance in different ways in different parts of the world. And certainly in North America, it's been that secularism, and almost acceptance of any spirituality other than Jesus, and that intimidation factor that often works its way very subtly into situations, and where the enemy is trying to silence us as children of God. And to just kind of cross that line. And so, I think for everyone, whether it's Guatemalan or whether it's North American or any other part of the world, crossing that line and saying, I have been redeemed and I cannot be quiet. And there are so many things that we will be able to do in heaven that we can't do here. Heaven is going to be a new creation, and we will be able to, but there are some things that we can only do here and that we won't be able to do in heaven, and that is proclaim the news of Jesus. And so that's what we're called to. And if we have to forego some of those other pleasures, or some of those other dreams that we might have of what we, in our proverbial bucket list, the bucket list can be fulfilled in heaven, but sharing the gospel, that is for now, and that's everyone's call.
Yep, very good. Hey, one of my biggest joys when I was down there visiting you guys was when you had, I think you had like a half hour or 40 minutes of worship time prior to the school starting. So the school I went to, I think, was a smaller, maybe 1st to 4th grade or something like that, and there was 100 or so kids worshiping, and it was like something I'd never seen before. I mean, they were worshiping, and it wasn't just like they were singing the song that the leader up there was leading them in. They were worshiping. And so I think one of the great things that you guys do should be a model a lot of missionaries would consider doing is you almost like build the church or build the worship first, because I think that's kind of the way you develop your schools, is you almost do it around a worship center, and then you start building the classrooms around that. You want to give us a little bit more insight on how you develop a school and maybe in a new community?
Well, when we start a school in a brand new community, the children also have never seen worship or participated in it. And when we first begin, we basically just teach them, God wants you to worship him and he deserves to be worshiped. So everyone, please, open your mouth and let this music come out of you. And we ask them to close their eyes and think about Jesus, and they do what they're told to do without really understanding what they're doing at all. But as they continue to do that day after day after day, and they're led in prayer to a God who loves them, and it becomes their own. It doesn't take long, maybe a year or two, and they accept it. They worship the Lord. And in North America, we very much have the idea that, you don't force worship or church on children. Let them come up with that themselves, or choose their own way. But I always...
We don't force them, we invite them.
But I always explain it like this to teams that come. I always say to them, children know that anything that is truly important, they are forced to do. They're forced to brush their teeth. They're forced to make their bed. They're forced to do their homework. Anything that is really important, you have to do it. No questions asked. But when it comes to worship, is that not important? Does God not deserve that? Is he not worthy? So whether you feel like worshiping or not is not the point. It's not like, do I feel like brushing my teeth? No, I have to do that if I feel like it or not. So we say, we have to worship God. He deserves to be worshiped by us. So we are going to worship him.
Yep.
And it becomes part of what they do. And
it really becomes a supernatural encounter. By the time they're grade 4, grade 5, or grade 6, they're not doing it because they're told. They're doing it because they want to.
Yep.
And it is just amazing when they grow older, and we have about half of our staff now are former students, and when they talk about their elementary or junior high years in our program and those devotional times, they say, like, it was a time, it was like a refuge for me. This is a moment when all of the cares of the world would drop off, and I would feel the love of God. I would feel his acceptance. I would feel his warmth, and I would have hope. And so as soon as you hear those words, this is a refuge from all of the things that were troubling them, and that there's hope, and that God is there. They fall in love with the Lord. And that's beautiful to see. That's beautiful.
And it was obvious within the children there that I was with that day. They truly were, because I love the way you said that, supernatural, because if it's not adding value, if they're spending 40 minutes of time a day in worship and they don't feel like it's adding value, they're going to kind of abandon that. But obviously your children aren't abandoning it, because it is adding value. It's bringing joy. It's that refuge in which they are seeking. So while you're not forcing them, basically you're training them to understand that worship is important. So I love that concept, and whatever you guys are doing, keep it up, because it's amazing to see young children like that worshiping. I wish we would see it more here in North America, but that inspired me to the point where I knew that what Another Child Foundation was doing needed to be connected with you guys, because that's the fruit. That's the fruit in
Thank
which
you.
we all want to see.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for your support. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for visiting us. That means a lot to us. And it means a lot to our children. And to know that there's somebody in North America thinking about them, praying about them. They don't think particularly monetarily. In our sponsorship program, they never say, well, how much money do they give and what does it buy? They feel like somebody's in the corner with them. Somebody's writing a letter. So as people are listening to this podcast, if you have a sponsor in any other part of the world, I just encourage you to write a letter. It means so much to them to know that somebody is praying for them and caring for them.
Yeah. And mission trips can do the same thing. That's one of the final things I want to talk about real quick is if a person did decide to come on a mission trip down to Guatemala to visit you guys in your ministry, what would kind of happen? What is a typical mission trip involve, and just the value in which that could bring someone if they were to invest 10 days into a trip to Guatemala?
We try and set up, we call it a mini missions experience, where they come and taste a little bit of many different components of being a missionary. And so we're involved in children's ministry because we have a lot of children in our ministry.
And that looks like a little DVBS for 3 days with the same children, so they can form a relationship.
We're usually involved in a small work project, building a school classroom or a kitchen or building medical clinic or something like that.
We take them to pray in the hospital for the sick children.
And then we are involved in some cross-cultural experiences. I take them to this place where the people are worshiping these gods, and it's just shocking for us to see as North Americans. But there are some real life applications to take away, because we have our high places in North America. They look very different, but we bow to the rituals that society has kind of taught us to bow to without knowing it. And so we do a lot of cross-cultural experiences.
And we also take them to visit some homes of some of our people, and so that they can see how they live, but also know them and pray with them. And I'll tell you, like sometimes the North Americans will say, aren't they embarrassed when we come into their home and see how they live? No, they're thrilled that you came. In fact, I've had some of our people say to me later, now I know God has not forgotten us,
Yeah.
you know, that someone came to visit us.
So, and then we do a debrief every evening, usually every evening, and where we just kind of process what it is the Lord is speaking to our hearts, what He's asking of us. And if a short-term mission trip ends when the person goes back home, then we feel in many respects we've failed.
Yeah.
I think the real purpose of a missions trip is to be a stepping stone, a part of the process of growth and reevaluating what we really want to do with our lives, how we want to invest our lives, so we don't invest it in things that really are temporary and not eternal.
Yeah. So, well, I just want to thank you guys for your stories and all the inspiration you've done. We're looking forward to it. And I know we could get into, there's so much more we could get into, because I know what Another Child Foundation has decided to do is to support an infant home. Touch base on that real quick about what the infant home is doing. That's kind of a new ministry, a couple of years old for you.
2 years old, yeah. We have received, I don't know how many babies in all now, because some just come for a little while and go. But we started off just accepting babies that were up to 2 years old. And there are so many that are abandoned, or we have incredibly sad stories that these babies have lived even in the first week of their life before we receive them. But we are allowed to have them in our hands, in our arms, and love on them and give them what they need. And we see them heal even their little hearts, and they begin to flourish. During the pandemic now, we had the Ministry of Social Services call us and say, there's a little girl about 6 years old and she has nobody. We found her on the street and she has nobody. There's no family. No one wants her. And she's in very bad shape. And we thought, well, we don't take 6-year-olds, but they said, we have no other place to take her. So Susie came to live in our home. And when she arrived, I was imagining this really timid little 6-year-old, but she was a wildcat. Like, she was just all over the place, screaming and yelling and running. I thought, oh no, what did we get ourselves into? She had never had a bath. She'd never been cared for or cleaned. And she was just basically wild, like never had been taught anything. And as we began working with her, you know, we discovered and loving her, we discovered that she loves having her hair done pretty. She loves having nice dresses and fancy shoes. And she just loves it. She's just flourishing. Now she's actually going to school with, well, the other thing is, during the pandemic, the time when we weren't allowed to even leave here, some of our nannies are actual teachers. So they actually took it upon themselves.
She'd never been to school.
She'd never been to school, but they began to teach her and give her little assignments and homework, and she started learning. Now she's going to school, and she is just making friends with everyone and loves going to the devotional. It's, you know, it's a life rescued.
She's a dynamic one. Wow. You know, with the Lord working in her, I shudder to think if anybody would get in their way.
You know, she had lived such an independent life for 6 years and not been controlled by anyone. So there's been some challenges, but she's learning. And she, you know, when she had misbehaved one day, she said to one of the caregivers, she said, but please don't stop loving me. You know, so, you know, she's loving being loved, you know, and the social workers from the Ministry of Social Work have come to speak to her, and she said, I don't want to leave here. I want to stay here. This is where I want to be. So it's,
And if she needs correction, the worst thing that can happen to her is they say you can't wear your shoes for the next 6 hours because she loves her shoes.
Yeah.
Typical woman, typical woman.
She came barefoot to us. She had no shoes, but so we have actually more than one child now that is older than the 2-year mark, actually several of them. And so desperately, we are looking now to building another home, because our house is an infant home.
For
And
babies,
so for babies, and these kids are living in the infant house, but it's really not set up for them. And so we're wanting to go on to the second stage of our orphanage, where we build a little home that'll have a mom and dad live in it and take care of these kids.
To try and emulate a family,
Yeah,
a family environment.
kind of our own personal foster care system, we could call it, or something like that, because they don't have that kind of program here in this country. And so
hopefully when you come, you'll see the construction underway.
that's what we're hoping will be the next construction.
Yeah. Well, I know from another child's perspective, that we're excited to be part of that. We're looking forward to developing that part of the ministry with you, partnering with you on that. Your vision is good for that, and that's what we want. We want to partner with people who are truly making a difference, and you guys are doing that. And personally, as important as the work is to educating kids who are in families, keeping them out of that possibility of becoming orphans, that's very important, and I'm glad you guys are doing it, and we do it in other places of the world too. But it's the orphan, it's the child, like you just described, that really pulls on my heartstrings, and that those children need to be taken care of. And to find that, whether it's a forever home or whether it's just living in a midst of people who love them, it's so important. And you guys do amazing work. So I'm gonna give you one chance here and they can find more information. Any listeners can go to anotherchildfoundation.org, and we'll have a link there to where you can learn more about the Guatemalan ministry and how to be involved in that. But where can they find you if they want information on you guys to learn more about? Where would they go? Facebook, website?
We're in Facebook, and we have websites as well. We'll post them on the screen, or however you wish to circulate them. Probably they can be in contact with you about that. Website in America and website in Canada as well. And all the information is there. And if I can just close from our side here, saying, Tim, to you and all your staff at Another Child Foundation, and to all those who support you, and the pastors and the churches that are working with you, as being one of the organizations that's receiving in a foreign country, the work that Another Child Foundation is doing is so valuable. And I just want to say thank you to all of you, right from your staff all the way to the pastors and the supporters, and those who are praying, everyone who writes a check. It is so meaningful and so worthwhile and so valuable. And life is too short to be involved in so many things that don't count for the kingdom, but this counts for the kingdom. And just very grateful to all of you.
Yeah. We're thankful to you, and we're thankful for you taking your time to be our guest and on the show and the podcast. And just want to say thank you, and God bless you, and take care. So
thank you. It's been a privilege.
All right. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. I was blessed to have Les and Rita on for a 1-hour episode that we broke into 2 parts. Once again, I'm going to remind you, if you want to see part 1 of this interview, go to missionfocusedlife.com. You'll see part 1 of that interview along with all the other interviews. We've had 12 other podcasts before this. So go back there, enjoy them, get all caught up, and be inspired to really do the things that God is calling you to do. So that is the one thing I would like for you to do within the next period of time, is to really pray to God and ask him, what is he calling you to do with your life? And it may not be pack up your family and drive to Guatemala. It may be something you can do within your family, within your church, within your community. But anyway, I know that God has big plans for you. And I just want to highly encourage that you subscribe to this podcast. And each week you'll be inspired by some incredible people that we have planned to be interviewing here in the in the short term. So anyway, thanks and God bless. All right.
This has been A Mission Focused Life with Tim Olafson. Find us online at missionfocusedlife.com as well as on Facebook at facebook.com/Mission Focused Life. You can subscribe to the video version of this show on YouTube and the audio version on Spotify, as well as anywhere you get your podcasts.